the supply management idea become more and more accepted. The supply management idea become more and more accepted. The supply management idea become more and more accepted.
th EIPM annual conference and one event of the EIPM 30th anniversary. Thanks very much to be with us today. For 30 years, EIPM has been one of the leading edge in terms of research, education, training, and creation of concepts. This is for 30 years of the EIPM. For 24 years of the EIPM annual conference, we have been the paramount in Europe for the purchasing professionals, the place to be to meet purchasing professionals and purchasing specialists, and in the wonderful environment. This year, as you know, conference has been changing and the world has been changing. The conference is different. We'll be as professional as we used to be and as we have been always, and we'll be as friendly as we were. But as you know, we get a bit less of discussion, less coffee break, less champagnes. But much more participants. We are over 1,000 people from all around the world, and we are very pleased to be with you today. So not only from Europe, but from the rest of the world. This is the beauty of online conference. So less coffee, less champagne, but much more people. So thanks very much to be with us. Nevertheless, I promise you that during this 2 days conference, you're going to have a lot of fun somehow. Wonderful people, wonderful speakers, and a chance to be with these great speakers. The topic we're going to cover towards fifth generation is, as you know, the title of a book we published some months ago. You know that we are facing this big crisis. But at the same time, I would say that's an exciting period. It's fascinating, it's challenging, and we have to take some decisions that perhaps we never took before. And I think it's a period great in terms of opportunity, and it's great an opportunity, decision making, problem solving for all the purchasing professionals and for the purchasing profession as itself. So during these 2 days, in between 2 days and tomorrow, we're going to cover 4 main topics with 12 wonderful speakers coming from 10, by the way, 10 different countries. The first topic we're going to cover is tackling risks. The second is how can we lower the financial break-even point. The third is how can we revisit the supply chain footprint, and the fourth one be investing in new technologies. You understand that all these topics are coming from this crisis, but we have to overcome, and taking this in consideration will be even better, even stronger. So thanks very much for your trust. Thanks very much for being with us. Good morning, Europe. Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Middle East. Nice lunch, India. Good afternoon, Asia. Good evening, Australia. Good night, America. Welcome the world. As you could see outside, the weather is great. A bit fresh, but very great. Very pleased to meet you back here inside the EIPM building in Archamps, the Archamps campus near Archamps, near Geneva. Welcome again to these first days of the 24th annual conference. Our conference is sponsored this year by Argo & Co, supported by Les Achats and CDF. As I just said some minutes ago, we have 12 speakers from 10 different countries, covering for the 4 topics. Oh, by the way, you know that we are over 1,000 people looking at this conference. This morning, over 700 were already present. These 4 topics, that's quite interesting. These 4 topics are not at all topics on purchasing procurement. They are related to business. For us, it's quite important because it means that the purchasing is really in the center of the business. The purchasing procurement has to support business. Purchasing procurement is influencing business. So this is the first point, which is very important for us. Business procurement is in business, and somehow is working for business. So this is the first point, which is important for us. The second point, which we would like to highlight, is that all these 4 topics are related to our turbulent pre-COVID period, which has been even accelerating during this COVID period. You know that turbulence is always linked to the notion of time. Time acceleration, time deceleration. So we will be back on this idea of time. Another point which is important also to highlight is that these 4 topics are highlighting the importance of time, the time frame, the speed, the pace. As we did already explain in the newly published EIPM book called 5th Generation Purchasing, when pace meets powers. And I think this is a great point of this period, the pace and power getting together. So after this short introduction, what I would like to say today is that we will cover 2 topics today and 2 new topics tomorrow. So today we're going to cover tackling risks and lowering financial break-even points. For each of these topics, we will welcome first 3 speakers. Each of them will be presenting some ideas about the topic of risk or the topic of lowering the break-even. Then we have a discussion, a roundtable discussion. We will be moderated by one person from EIPM Argo, and then a synthesis. And then we have a coffee break. Sorry, I was getting to forget the coffee break. Coffee break is always very important to get the time for discussing, to get the time for exchanging with your peers. So I hope you're nicely set. You're going to be ready now, and we're going to jump in this first topic. The first topic, as I said for this morning, it's about tackling risks. That's amazing because when we speak about risk management has been quite forever kind of an excellence for purchasing.
purchasing department, purchasing professionalism is part of. And when we say what are you doing, I try to work on anticipating risk, and my role is risk management. So this is part of a job roles of a buyer of purchasing department. But what is amazing with a crisis, COVID crisis, is even though everybody has been very well informed about the COVID crisis getting on in China first by mid-January, even though quite everybody got all these tools on risk management, very few companies did anticipate or react promptly to the COVID crisis. So the point is why? So why? On one hand, we have a tool. On one hand, we were aware, but at the same time, nothing really had been involved and nothing has been really working. So this is a very important point for us, just trying to understand why. So we're going to try to answer all these points, and we're going to try to see what's the best solution to anticipate to react promptly during this crisis or next crisis. COVID crisis is one crisis, so we're facing a lot of crises, but this one is global and global at the same time. So for this first topic, I'm very pleased to welcome three speakers. First speaker will be Fabrice Thomas. He's coming from Agilent, and he's Vice President Global Supply Chain. He's working in Singapore. He's French initially, but working in Singapore. The second speaker will be Yusaku Kuwara, Japan Airlines. He's a risk director for Japan Airlines. He's coming, as you understand, from Japan. And the third speaker will be Karl Breidenbach, Infineon, Senior Director Procurement Production, coming from Germany. The panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Hervé Legendre, Professor at EIPM, Director of Research and Director of Value Creation Observatory. I hope you're going to enjoy this first session on risks tackling, and have a wonderful conference with us now.
Thanks very much, Fabrice, to be with us this morning. Just some questions. How critical is supply chain risk management for Agilent today?
In this period of time, not only related to the COVID, but to the market growth that we were facing, risk management is an essential part of our day-to-day job. Because if you don't know, Agilent Technology is serving laboratory, hospital, research institute, university, and experience, but also patient treatment are really depending on our capability to deliver accurately to our customer. And in our structure, supply chain start from the strategic procurement to the tactical procurement to the manufacturing and logistics. And when I mean logistics, this is both because we own our own warehouse, but also our distribution center. So we take the responsibility to deliver to the final customer. So managing the internal risk about our capability to manufacture and deliver, but also capability to deliver accurately to the final customer is essential for us. And when I mean accurately, sometimes that can be at the precise hour that we have to deliver to the customer. So understanding the internal risk and the external risk, and emphasize now with the COVID situation, is significantly critical for us.
Thank you, Fabrice. So what will be the 2 or 3 key principles that you think are really key for risk management for you?
And I think on top of knowing our job in terms of procurement, supply chain, and so on, I mean having the right competency, there is 3 factors that emerge during this crisis. First is the modelization of the risk management. The second one is the data management, and the third one I would say is the real-time information and decision that has to be taken.
Thank you, Fabrice, for these 3 points. Can you dig a bit in the first and second and third points? So let's start with the first one.
Yeah, if I speak first about the modelization, actually, when we speak about risk management, as I was saying, there is internal and external factor. The difficulty is to put all information together and to have a clear vision of what are the risks we are exposed to. If I take the example at Chedgenot, we are managing about 2,500 suppliers worldwide. We have manufacturing sites everywhere in the world. We have 4 big distribution centers, 2 in Asia, 1 in Europe, and one in US. The important things was to understand what kind of disruption, if I look from that angle, we could face from the supplier. That could be related to their capacity because we had an increased demand. That could be about their capability to bring simply worker in their factory because of lockdown, because of curfew, because of increased COVID case from their worker typically. That was also their capability to deliver. And you know that for medical and healthcare, there were some principle of essential service. So it's how to help them to grab the right permit and authorization to be able to ship and to deliver to our factory. So there is, just speaking about from the supplier perspective, there is a lot of information that has to be handled. And when you manage 2,500 suppliers, you cannot make it through an Excel file, simply. So the complexity was how we can set that information, all those potential information, into something which is understandable by manager who don't need to dig into all those information, but who need to have the right visualization of information to take the right decision. So this is what I mean by this modelization. And there is nothing which exists on the market, actually, a plug and play solution. So everything at Agilent has been developed internally by our data scientist team within supply chain.
Okay, so you did not take a solution from a market, you developed it. And how long did it take? Just curiosity. How long did it take? You have been leading this, who has been...
It was something like than about a month.
Okay.
We were using, because we are extremely connected to SAP as a set of information, gathering all the different models, you know, the capacity of suppliers, capability to transport, those kind of risks and so on. We were gathering, and this is a little bit the data management, the second point, through ClickSense. So we have in supply chain an organization of data scientists and data analysts that are responsible to develop those interface for manager, who are responsible to take data from whatever, if it's Google or weather real time or SAP internally. So finding the right information internally and externally, and to bring them in something in this modelization, this interface, which is quite understandable, I would say, by anyone who don't know programmation on SQL or Python and this kind of stuff.
Okay, so you have a link with a second point. So let's go on the second point.
Yeah, the data management.
Data management, yeah.
Yes, is one of the most critical. You know, I'm truly believing that our manager actually, they spend too much time on extracting and crunching data. That I used to say they spend 80% of their time understanding data, 20% of decision, and this paradigm really has to shift in the coming year. But you cannot do it by yourself. You cannot be an expert in procurement, in supply chain, and also at the same time SQL and Python. You need to bring the right competencies. So you need to bring people who understand how to find and extract data from free source, but also from internal source, and how they can extract those information. They can modelize those information and connect them together. If I take one very simple example, one of the risks for us was the spread of COVID case around the globe. So one of the modelization we had is that we had a worldwide map with our plus 2,000 suppliers. And we were looking at the number of sites that they were shipping to, or the number of warehouse, in terms of volume, but in terms of parts, but also in terms of impact on our manufacturing and our capability to ship. So the full connection. And we were superposing both at the same time the evolution of the weather, because you remember the crisis started in February, but also the expansion of the number of COVID cases, because that was helping us to understand which kind of risk we were exposed to. And when the COVID situation, the COVID virus was expanding across US, and that was something around April, May, something like last year, it was not the same everywhere. So you could not consider US as one country, but you had to consider the big city and east and eastern and central side of US to understand finally, okay, were we thinking that it will expand to California, for example, where I have a lot of suppliers? So all this modelization and risk management, this is one of the aspects about the expansion of the COVID, was really helping us to decide what to do, and not to have email and phone call with suppliers every day to understand, okay, is there any risk you will shortfall of employee, or because there will be additional COVID case and this kind of things, which is too many information to manage at the same time. So our team, the data scientists and analysis, they were taking information, internal one about the flow, size of supplier, impact on revenue, but also at the same time, external information about the spread of the COVID, typically about some lockdown situation in some country and so on.
Okay, and this helped you in anticipating some lockdown or some.
Well, typically, if I take the example of Malaysia, where we are bringing a lot of product from Malaysia to Singapore and Penang, where we also have a factory. This country has been lockdown, open up, and there was some specific authorization for suppliers who were working for company in the medical and healthcare. So there was this essential service. So when we start to see the spread of virus and the coming lockdown in Malaysia, then we were helping all the suppliers we have in Malaysia to send them the authorization, because we had the right to, that they can ask the authorization and request the right permit to manufacture and to ship from Malaysia to Singapore. That was kind of essential part of the job here. And if I take another angle, this was also the possibility for us to anticipate what we should do in terms of inventory. Should we increase that inventory? Should we ask the supplier to prepare more and more material ahead of the COVID arrival, I would say.
Okay, thanks. Great. And the third case about transportation.
That's another, and here I can move a little bit to the real-time decision and management. When the COVID started, when we start to see the crisis, we completely changed our approach with our logistics service provider. So with those DHL, KWE, FedEx, and so on. And previously, Agilent was very much concentrated, having one supplier per region. Our strategy 2 years ago was to open the panel of those suppliers, not only for a matter of competition, but to ensure that we will have the right capacity available. And we felt that there was a stringent situation on the market. So here we have changed our approach. Instead of just looking at the cost and performance of the suppliers, we have set contract based on the capacity, and we have reserved capacity with those suppliers from the early beginning. And when I say early beginning, this is the decision I took was already in February last year. We were working with the 5-6 big LSP, and we were setting contract for the next 3 or 6 months on some lanes, so from Germany to China, or from China to some location in US, some recurrent one, where we were pre-booking capacity. We knew almost what would have been the volumes. Sometimes we were above, sometimes we were lower, but at least we were reserving those. Sometimes we have lost a little bit money because we were not able to fill in the aircraft or the capacity that was available. But at no point of time, and this is what is interesting, by setting this kind of partnership, by no point we have not been able to ship in between our warehouse or to the final customer. So that we have completely reset that. And in terms of cost, because this is an important factor, we have also fixed the price per kilogram on that transport for the next 3 or 6 months. And we will allow us to revise the cost up and down, depending on the situation of the market, to stabilize a little bit our relation and to not focus on, okay, should I look for a container? Should I look for an air freight and this kind of thing, but to have a more streamlined relation. Nevertheless, and when I speak about real time, now since February last year, something like this, we have organized a team of transport leaders across the region and across the site. So every week, it was about more than 20 people in a meeting, sharing the situation, sharing about the cost, the capacity, the evolution of the market, the evolution of the different air freight company, to ensure that we could take immediately the right decision by switching a lane, for example, in between Germany to US, from this supplier to this suppliers. And we know that it takes some time. So the creation of that team, specifically focusing on the transport and logistic management, was essential to understand the risk, being able to, through this modelization, visualize the risk, then to connect with the supplier, the LSP, the logistic partner, and to take the appropriate decision. I mean, anticipating by booking capacity, switching lane in between supplier if necessary, or even, and this is something that we have enhanced at the same time, changing the transport mode. So at that period of time, we have moved a lot from air freight to ocean freight. So now we know that ocean is skyrocketing, those costs, but we have avoided quite expensive amount of spend on air freight by also moving this. All those decisions, and this is just an example of 3 of them, was enabled because we were able to visualize the data and because we had people who were really looking at the right information internally, externally, and make them understandable by us.
What's very great, and what's very interesting, I think, is your capacities of being agile. So it's a question of agility. On these 3 examples, it's a question of agility. So from agility, I mean, people, what are the key for you in terms of people to be sure you're going to be agile? So what have you been looking for? How have you been selecting the right people for being part of these teams? And so on and so forth. So do you think you need some very specific competence? Do you need, it's a question of leadership because you are there and people are become agile? So
there is several things. And I think the first one was the motto or the wildcard that was given by our CEO. And when our CEO, February, March last year, start to understand what was the consequence of the crisis in terms of logistic cost, in terms of capacity, the only message that we receive was, you do whatever you want, you have any opportunity, you take it, but we have to serve our customer and we have to deliver to our customer. So there was no pressure on the cost, on the savings, on these kind of things. The main direction was, okay, you do whatever you need. You are free of, absolutely. If you need to spend more, absolutely. If you need to change the mode, absolutely. So that was the essential message we received. The second thing that perhaps more in terms of leadership, when we create that team, so we have organized a transport network across the globe from California to China, to be sure that people can understand what was the specific situation in the country. What were the constraints? What were the legal constraints? What was the evolution of this pandemic and also the lockdown, curfew, and all these kind of things. So, in terms of leadership, that was to organize that team and then to set clearly the function. So, some people were focusing on how, from my country, I can ship to the distribution center. So, I'm very much focused on my country. And at the second level, some people were purely working on the contract and long-term perspective, or long-term, I say 3 months, 6 months, and in this crisis, with those FedEx, DHL, KW, and so on. So we have very clearly specified the different roles of the people. The third thing, which is very important, it's in terms of competencies. I do believe if we have been successful in this, and we have grown in fiscal year 20 at Agilent, and it's partially because we have been able to deliver our customer. It's because our team know exactly what they have to do. Yeah, on site, the transport manager, the transport leader, they are responsible to negotiate every day. And it's not only in terms of cost. They know they have this capability to understand the balance in between. I need to serve the business. I need to serve the objective and my personal objective in terms of savings, etc. So they were able to really make the trade-off in between what is essential to serve the business, what is essential to serve our customer, and what's come to the usual KPI and focus. And basically, yes, they know very well their job, and they know their supplier, they know how, yes, to manage transport. And that's a big community that usually in supply chain, we tend to forget. Logistic and transport management, we tend to delegate this quite a lot, and I can see that on the market. And because we had those competency internally, I think this is what helped us really to be successful and finally deliver, I will say, not on time, but at least 100% of our customer in this period of time. And that's continuing now because it is not the end of the crisis.
As a conclusion, any final recommendation? It was part of your recommendation or conclusion, what you said, but any other comments on?
Well, I think at the management level and mid-management level in supply chain, we have more and more to be focused on the business and the business impact. And supply chain is an essential part of it, but we need to understand how to serve differently and better the business and how to serve our customer. And all the very competency expertise in procurement, in logistics and so on, need to be given to people who are expert. You don't need to be a super expert to manage supply chain. You need to understand the trade-off in between business and what need to be provided from supply chain. Second thing is that you need to be able to think about the modelization of the information. Here we were speaking about risk management, but that can be applied for many other different topics. And to bring the right competencies for the people who know how to manage data, those data scientists and data analysts. Our job more and more is really to connect the dots to create this internal ecosystem to really serve a business and not to be only self-focused on supply chain, procurement or logistic as it was still some years ago. So we are much more now, I believe, COVID revealed this business enabler more and more. Than only expert in shipping or buying.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabrice. Very nice speech, great explanation. Business enabler. You said business enabler is exactly what we're speaking about, business enabler. You show us how to anticipate. You explain us how to develop your own tools based on your own expertise. You explain also some of the elements you were looking for in terms of behavior. So thanks very much for this first presentation. Now, I would like to jump in with Yusaku. It's quite interesting to have one person from Japan here on board. You know that due to earthquake, due to tsunami, Japan has a culture of anticipating risks and or to react promptly to risks, so to risk consequences. So we were delighted to know that Yusaku was arriving on board. We are very honored and very pleased to have Yusaku Kuwahara with us. As I said, Director of Risk Manager in Japan Airlines. Now.
The first question is what COVID-19 has brought to the socioeconomics and consumer behavior in Japan?
Firstly, working environment has been accelerated to change in Japan. Lifetime employment was believed as a virtue of Japanese management, and the employees have demonstrated its loyalty to long working hours and everyday commuting with very crowded train. Of course, new emerging companies in Japan had proceeded to get out of such an old system earlier than outbreak of COVID-19. Remote working by a high-speed network has been facilitated by Japanese government, and it has settled in Japanese society due to COVID-19. It is really good to save on the office space and its rent, get work and family life balance, further promote electronic commerce and online amusement content at home, and contribute to business continuity due to diversified working site, although group mind will become weaker. Accordingly, the type of employment between a company and an individual will be also diversified. Secondly, unprecedented monetary support to damaged businesses with subsidies and free financing due to COVID-19 has made a bubble economy in stock market and real estate market in Japan, while its country primary balance is further deteriorating. Japanese regime and the Bank of Japan will not be able to stop its easy money policy. This wealth effect will support Japanese economy for years, while its disparity in wealth is being bigger and disparity of the consumption toward high-priced product and low-priced product are further proceeded. For instance of airline business, its traffic will shift from business demands to leisure demands because it is a part of luxury goods in economics, and air cargo continues to be in robust demand due to electronic commerce. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this comprehensive answer. Now let's move to the next question. What risks will we encounter in the future of Japan after COVID-19?
Biggest risk is a change in country monetary policy. Japan will have to explore a soft landing scenario of the bubble economy in years. This might be brought by the change of Japanese regime or change of president of Bank of Japan. Secondly, climate change is devastating the impact of natural disasters in addition to earthquakes in Japan. Business continuity preparedness, including supply chains, continues to be strengthened. Typhoon 21 in the year of 2018 hit Kansai International Airport. It was flooded for the first time due to high tide brought by the Typhoon 21. Kansai International Airport was a hub cargo terminal to and from the western part of Japan. Cargo warehouses in the airport were submerged and its function disrupted for weeks. Manufacturers located in the western part of Japan had to suddenly change their supply chain from Kansai Airport to Narita Airport for their imports and exports. Finally, Japan shall not be late for digital transformation. Japan has still paper transactions and traditional business practices which may deter digital transformation. Japanese government shall take the stronger initiative to embed digital transformation into Japanese society faster. Thank you.
Very interesting, thank you. Now, looking into risk management, what would you see as the techniques and the practices that will play a key role in this post-COVID world?
Okay. Risk management uses scenario planning and system thinking. Of course, we are used to traditional ways such as risk map techniques and risk response options listed in ISO 31000. Scenario planning and system thinking is more powerful for horizon scanning. We start PESTEL analysis, politics, economy, society, technology, legal, environment, from media sources or think tanks. We pick up two possible game changers to shape the future business environment. As we don't know well if this factor moved toward positive or negative, we make one for vertical axis and another for horizontal axis to make a four-quadrant matrix and decide most possible scenario. It may unfold a multiple layers of a roadmap, from a future product at the top layer to fundamental research and development at the bottom layer. System thinking is used to draw a system model diagram with key components and variants in order to find chain risks. For example, COVID-19 stops economic activities in human contact services in order to decrease the number of the infected. Both gears of business performance of human contact services and the decrease of the number of the infected move in the same direction. On the contrary, monetary supply increases to support damaged businesses of human contact services. As a result of this monetary easing, it drives the bubble economy in stock market. Gears of monetary supply and the price of stock market move in the same direction, with synchronizing with the drive to decrease the number of the infected. In short, every phenomenon is driven by the other phenomenon. Risk management uses system thinking to find chain risks and key factors which drive those risks, and then we control the risk volume to confine it within a maximum risk appetite or tolerance. Thank you.
Now, if we look into procurement and supply chain management, what would be your recommendations to professionals? What should they consider in terms of tools, governance, ways of working into the future?
I would like to suggest two things. First suggestion for supply management professionals is to involve the scenario planning and roadmap process. This gives supply management professionals the capability of backward looking from the future scenario. Scenario planning would be mostly utilized by marketing professionals or strategy planning professionals. However, supply management professionals can also contribute to this process. Supply management professionals have more opportunities to get information about new seeds of technologies or market trends from suppliers. Supply management professionals stand at the nearest location to bring innovation to their own organizations. After scenario planning, a product roadmap is usually developed to adapt the organization for the possible future market or demand. Once a future demand or needs on a product or services was envisaged, the organization shall enter into the phase of product or service designing on a backward basis from future demand or needs. Once the organization designed the product or service and the necessary functions in it, the organization will enter into the phase of research and development on a backward basis. When look at this process, supply management professionals can contribute in every phase via their knowledge and information. I really want supply management professionals not to be passive and want them to make a difference while it's involving scenario planning and roadmap process. Secondly, business continuity preparedness is a part of supply management responsibility. If the business of an organization support an infrastructure for the society, they have to pay more attention to business continuity. Japan has a proverb: business can only success with good for yourself, good for myself, good for society. This matches SDGs as well. Therefore, we shall always contribute to the society with our product or services, even in a disruptive situation, as much as we can, as far as society needs us. I would like to emphasize on the fact whether we can deliver our product or services depends on supply management professionals. Thank you.
Arigato, Yukasu-san. Thank you very much, Yukasu, for this really interesting presentation, just showing the culture of risk in Japan and what the Japanese society is implementing along the years for centuries, facing these risks. So thanks very much for this cultural presentation, I would say. Let's move now to the first speaker. And I would like to introduce Carl. As you know, the world today is really facing a big crisis on the semiconductor. It's a worldwide crisis on the semiconductor. And this crisis is a risk we're facing as any risks. So I think it's really interesting to welcome Carl just to work and to explain what this about. And we know that there are a lot of confidentiality beside this information, so it's not going to give you a lot of secret. But what's interesting is somehow to get the idea of in a very risky world we have today in the semiconductor, what somebody from is working on. So I'm very pleased to have Carl with us on board during this very turbulent time for the semiconductor. So thank you, Carl, to be with us now. Thank you very much, Herr Karl. Dankeschön. Thanks very much, Karl. Thank you very much for this presentation. We know that you are in the world of confidentiality during this crisis, but what you explained us was very interesting. Taking into consideration this difficult time. Just after this first presentation, you know, for each risk, we have to find an adapted solutions. I find mine, and in my case, I have this on my head. So just to conclude this risks tackling period, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Hervé Legendre. Hervé, as I said, is director of research at the EIPM. Hervé, the floor is yours with Fabrice, with Yusaku, and with
Carl.
Carl.
Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Very glad to be with the three of you for this roundtable discussion. It was really interesting already to go through all of these, interviews and exchange that we had in just a little bit before. So I'm really looking forward to our exchange now. I'll start with a first question that will be for Carl and Fabrice. During time of rapid changes, what we've seen from an academic studies perspective is that the companies that are able to be ahead of their competitors, this is an advantage they can keep for a long time. So this is something quite difficult to close on. So is this part of the way you're looking at the situation? do you see this as an opportunity to leapfrog competition, as an opportunity to build capabilities that can really help you to be ahead of the competition? Maybe we start with Carl, a reaction on this topic?
Yes, Hervé, I think this is something we are definitely considering, and I would say from at least two different angles. So I think the first angle is when you look at the semiconductor industry model. So it's a heavily cyclically industry. That means we are used to these heavy up and down turns. And at the same time, product development and qualification cycles of the different semiconductors are quite long. And this also applies to the manufacturing cycle time, because if you're moving to the more advanced chips, you have months until a product leaves the manufacturing floor and goes through this very lengthy processes. So this means when we are going into times of downturn, or we're going into these kind of industry crises that we are seeing in the last couple of months, we will still need to continue to invest heavily into pushing R&D, expanding manufacturing, finding new partners for the next generation of these new products. And because the product landscape and our competitors that we're delivering to are using it for long lifetime products that require a long development as well. And I'm speaking about the next generation of cars that you'll be seeing in 2025 or 26 upcoming. And then the second aspect is the procurement perspective. And here I would say, first of all, COVID-19, and then when you look at the upturn that has happened after that, it has taught many players in the industry, not only in semiconductors, that behaving opportunistically and just using just-in-time principles is not working so well. So in that sense, I really see the value in becoming a trusted partner, sticking to commitments in times of crisis. I would say even supporting your suppliers will then be able to create some sort of competitive advantage against some of your industry peers. And then when you look at digitization is really pushing procurement and the industry. It's creating the next frontier because everyone has to work from home. And we realize now that our process might not have been to the latest cutting edge, and we now have the chance to invest in this and to then come out of it with a competitive advantage. Okay, that's
Thank
it
you,
for
Carl. Thanks a lot. Very interesting. Fabrice, you're in an industry where, well, there's potential for growth these days. So do you have any reaction to this question about the opportunity to leapfrog competitors in this context?
Yeah, definitively. So the company I'm working for, Agilent Technology, is specialized in healthcare and lab equipment. So we were not directly taking benefit of the COVID crisis, even as we serve many hospital, lab, research institute that induce some of the positive challenge. We can look at it under two angles. The first one is the agility of our organization and the capability of the organization to adapt itself in a very short time and to refocus on priorities. On our side, in supply chain, belonging to the operation lead of our company, we were really focused on the digital transformation over the past 2-3 years. And because of the need to refocus and have short-term priorities, some project has been put in standby, some continue. But what was really important is how we can adapt to the new norm or to the new standard of operating the business. And I can see that from the logistics standpoint, and we will rediscuss this a little bit later on. So agility, refocus, and the leadership here. The second thing is, and that creates something new, because this is where you create new way of working, or where you need to unlock a certain value or certain legacy of the way you were operating in terms of business. So here, compared to seeing a competitor, the first mover have the advantage, definitively. Then it's the same if you look on the other side of supply chain with the procurement, with the supplier. So if you are able to imply the same from your supplier. If you are able to secure the flow of product, the capacity from your supplier, we have to be clear, this is capacity that will not be allocated to your competitors. And we know that in this situation of crisis, both for the company who has the chance to continue to grow, but also the one that has difficulty to make their supplier deliver. If you are able to do it, yes, you create a competitive advantage, and then you capture the capacity of your supplier. So positively, you can create a breakthrough by a new way of working, focusing on different priority short-term one. On the other side, if you are strong with your supplier, then you absorb their capacity, and you secure that. What Kelly was saying is also right, just to underline it, is that it puts a little bit your process, your way of working, and your baseline of work a little bit at risk. So if you are not very strong, or if you were not very strong in terms of process, in terms of structure, yes, that highlights that you have a lot of challenges that you will not be able to recover short term, but that gives us a little bit of indication what should be your priority in the next coming years to come back to something which is more stable.
Thank you, Fabrice. Very, very insightful in terms of how these different dimensions of evolving, repurposing some of the past activities and delivering into the future are creating a differential relative to competition. I'd like now to go to the other point you've just mentioned, which is the transportation industry has been absolutely essential in the development of all these globalization that we've seen over the past 20 years and even more. But today it's under some shock, it's under some constraints. So we thought it'd be interesting to have the views of Kouara on the air freight aspect, and then Fabrice on other aspects of transportation. So Kouara, any kind of comments on the current state in terms of transportation from an air freight perspective?
Okay, yes, thank you very much indeed for having me at this integrated conference. And first of all, yes, most of our fleets are on the ground due to COVID-19 now. Every country has its own policy to accept passengers. Air cargo is, however, in a robust demand now. We don't have freighters, so we utilize the cabin space to cargo due to a very limited number of passengers. So another challenge is vaccine transportation. It's going now. Yes, we carry a great deal of vaccine every day. Japanese government disparate gives assurance for the nation to the Olympic and the Paralympic game in Tokyo. So now, the electric commerce is growing in Japan due to working at home. Air cargo demand will continue for years, I predicted. That's everything.
Thank you. Fabrice, from your hand, looking at the global situation, any comment on the current transportation situation?
I would say this is going better. If we look at the situation 2020 21 compared to 2020, we are in better shape. Nevertheless, when you look at the number, this is still a bit challenging. The passenger daily capacity is still lagging by more than 56% compared to 20. The cargo is going better, but most of the transport is now using the passenger belly, and as long as there will be no passenger, then there will be no flight, so there will be no capacity of transportation. And minus 56, this is quite huge. The thing that we have to observe also is from the demand perspective. So here was the supply, but demand perspective from Asia and mainly from China to the rest of the world, the gap is only less than 5% now. That shows that the economy is recovering quite fast in Asia, but we are still facing capacity. So on one side, the westbound, so from Asia to Europe or Asia to US, is extremely expensive because the capacity is extremely limited. On the other side, there is extra capacity because flight has to go back and forth. So what I want to highlight here is that this situation is evolving. almost every month. And if you don't have a structure in your organization who is able to monitor that change and to adapt your way of working, or to adapt your transport lane, or to adapt and change your carrier, for sure you're lagging significantly behind. So referring to what we were just sharing behind, if you are not able to adapt yourself, switch off the carrier, change the lane, change transportation mode, and we could iterate that the company who has not already thinking about the move from air to ocean, from air to rail, and to disperse a little bit the risk related to transport, not only from the cost perspective, because here we are facing really on a capacity constraint, but for sure they are lagging. And for sure they have lost even a possible competitive advantage compared to the one who were able to anticipate that. Now it's never too late, because as it was just said before, most surely we know that the situation, at least for the transport, will stand like this for at least 2 or 3 years. This is what all the companies they are saying. There will be no clear and strong recovery of the capacity that we had in 2019. So it's still time for Fossion to refocus a little bit on the transport and logistics and the way we were working most probably before the COVID.
Thanks a lot, Fabrice. I think that's really interesting, because it's telling us that even though we might see some of the average, going up in a steady way, gradually, coming back to a fairly good volume of activity, there's a lot of disparities. There's a lot of differences across places, across sectors, across industries. And we should be paying attention not just to the average, but to any single information about abnormalities that can help us to anticipate some of the challenge. Quara, in this context, I mean, as a risk manager, when you're moving from a situation where there's 30% of a known to 70, 80, 90% of unknown, how do you change your way of accessing information? How do you rewire your ability to capture some of the signals that are essential to change and adapt to the new situation?
Okay. And first of all, yes, we do external analysis. As you know, yes, politics, economy, social, technology, legal, and the environment on a daily basis. Though we shall realize the change in stakeholders by situation. First, we confirm all affected stakeholders at the present and the future. Then gather information to select for the stakeholders. Fortunately, I contracted a major key news media and a think tank, and also SNS real-time monitoring service is also important, because the nation's sentiment may move the trend. And the information from government organization is collected and shared internally to predict and prepare the future. We then screen information for the related stakeholders and our business. Information turns into intelligence. I don't care any data or information which I don't use for a business purpose. Of course, information not directly related sometimes inspires me. It was to collect. It is yes, way of risk management. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really interesting, because the message from you is really like, it's not about firefighting. It's really about stepping back and revisiting some of the strategic framework we're using to understand the situation and plugging new sources of information into this in order to be able to, take the best decision at the right time. Really interesting. So now let's look at it from a people point of view. I think there's different perspective on the people side, whether we look at the culture, the capabilities we could be discussing now. So how do we balance a sense of urgency, a sense of continuity, and a longer sense of purpose in order to get the people working on the front line and at the center to do the right thing? Maybe Carl, if you want to start from that perspective, and then we can go to Fabrice.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the key leadership lessons that I have learned in the last couple of months is that creating the sense of urgency is really important when your organization or your team or your supplier has not yet understood that the changes are required. And this is important when you already see an extreme situation upcoming. So you have to act, you have to create this sense of urgency. However, now, as we're now in a constant change of uncertainty, like we saw it with COVID-19, the trade war, and so on, we're looking forward by seeing crisis as an opportunity to improve the competitive advantage. And therefore, this mutual purpose is really important. And I think I've seen some of the organizations, especially more associated with the medical equipment space, the pharmaceutical space, who are doing really well in that regard, because they really can connect their organizational target towards bringing us out of COVID-19. And then I would say another example of good corporate purpose for other companies is also Indian, I would say. So our main mission is to make the world easier, safer, and greener. It sounds very easy, but it's very hard because you need to develop these chips and products, and you have to find the best suppliers that are able to do that. And we're, creating this sense of urgency that we want to give to the world very efficient power electronics that don't consume so much of energy, that will positively basically impact the climate, is really something that a lot of employees within Infineon are working to. And then the other aspect is obviously we have said we want to become carbon neutral ourselves by 2030, and it's also giving a push. So in a nutshell, I'd say differentiate between when you need to create urgency versus building a big long-term mission, and balancing this is really the key for nowadays. Yeah.
Very interesting, these multiple horizon that you've just been describing. Fabrice, your own view on people capabilities and this culture that we need to instill during this period?
But the correlated with the necessary move and fast move and adaptation. So I think that starts with a strong leadership of the manager to really understand or to anticipate what could be the impact of this crisis and all those change, and to decide where the team has to refocus and what are the new priorities. And that need to be a very strong message. And on the second step, to be able to adapt the organization. So this is also for the people in the organization to understand that for a period of time, their role can change and their role has to change and their focus has to change. And the individual objective that they receive typically beginning of the year, perhaps 3 months, 4 months after, they are completely crap and they are not corresponding to anything. So this is the capability of the leader to understand the situation, to transcript the situation into new priority, to communicate and to transfer those information to the rest of the team, to adapt the organization, to reset the objective, to reset the focus. So this is where we can really see the capacity and the maturity or the seniority of the leader, of some of the leader, to make or to adapt the organization. Not only in the firefighting, because this is not only one spot of issue that we observe for 3 months or one problem. We know now that it will be a midterm crisis, and that will, from this, will be deliver a new norm, a new way of working. And that's the second part of the adaptation of the organization. There is a lot of new jobs that most probably were under considered perhaps in some of the organization, like risk management, like data scientists, like data analysts, those peripheral jobs that we were not focusing on when we speak about supply chain, that finally become more and more important. And I truly believe that more and more the leader in supply chain, not necessarily they will come from procurement or from logistics, but because the expectation is to have much more business acumen and to understand more the complexity of the economic and the world in itself, but also with the stakeholder. So it will be more a global view, which will be necessary for the supply chain leader than perhaps it was in the past. So midterm, yes, it will change definitively the profile of the procurement and supply chain leader. Just my view.
Thanks a lot, Fabrice. Really interesting. I think we really had over this discussion, a great insight into where is it that we need to adapt, where is it that we need to persevere, where is it and how can we address some of the short-term challenges, and how we can also look into future opportunities to really make a difference from a competitive point of view. I would really like to thank the three of you, for your input into this conference, the interviews, and this roundtable. It's been really a great pleasure to work with the three of you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Hervé.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. So,
Thank you very much, Hervé, for this discussion with our three speakers. Thank you, Saku. Thank you, Fabrice. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Hervé. Thank you very much. We're going to have some minutes now for coffee break with some
synthesis.
Synthesis. Sorry for that. I'm just jumping on that. The coffee break was necessary. So sorry for that. It's live. So we go for a synthesis, Hervé.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
So
we just postpone the coffee break.
Yeah, we'll postpone the coffee break, Bernard, just for a few more minutes, because we thought it would be interesting to conclude each of these, 1 hour and 15-minute sessions with a synthesis from our side. So I would like to welcome a partner from Argon & Co., Aldric Vignon. And I know you've been, cautiously looking at the exchange and all the videos, and I'd like to get your views about the sequence we've just seen.
Yeah, thank you, Hervé, for this very fruitful insight and round table. I must confess, hearing the first discussion on the round table, that we have different views and approach, but I'm pleased to see that the foundations regarding risk management are quite similar. So here are my key takeaways with some additional views and thoughts based on the roundtable, the videos, and the discussion I had with some of our Argon & Co. customers. So risk management is now at the heart of all procurement activities and has brought new insights. And it's no more firefighting activities, nor long-term view. It's mixed and a combined approach. Risk management foundations are now set on technology, skills, cooperation, and agility. So I will elaborate on those 4 topics. First things first, as we have noticed, technology has a huge role to play. As risks are more and more diverse, the signals that help anticipating them are diffused, coming from inside the company, from suppliers, and from all around the world, macro trends, weather conditions, etc. So the last year period has shown that handling risk properly is no more a matter of months of project, but great result could be achieved in a month or less, as described during the roundtable. And if you combine data scientist skills with procurement business understanding, you bring lots of value around risk. Second point is around procurement leader skills, which are more and more critical and rely now on a deep understanding of business needs, internal stakeholders ecosystems, suppliers landscape, and behaviors and strategy for sure, and the macro trends of the industry. These new skills are additional one, and they will make the difference in terms of performance in the future. And as mentioned by Fabrice, new jobs are emerging right now. But keeping human relationship is also key to anticipate and solve risk. The crisis has shown us that more than ever, regular contact should be set and managed at all levels, either at suppliers or procurement side. Keeping the line open, engaging regular discussion, sharing forecasts, assumptions, etc. So adapt your talk to the audience and especially to the ones who need to decide. Last point I would like to share is critical, is around agility and being able to adapt constantly in this new environment. So procurement professionals must challenge their own belief and practices. Do I change the frame of my relationship from years to months, from quarter to weeks? Do I have the mindset to rebalance frequency the targets, as mentioned by Fabrice, for example? What are the innovative levers I can leverage? My first guess is that there is no good time frame, just time frame adapted to the situation and the risk we are facing. So Fabrice has elaborated on that during the roundtable. So do not consider technology could do everything. Focus your time and effort on thinking and acting, and no more on gathering and compiling information, as Fabrice said. So it's time for a major data management shift. So as a conclusion, if we step back, I must say everything is already written in all procurement books, and we were all taught risk is part of the category management work. But now it's for real, and it's part of all management expectations. So do not wait for the next crisis to reshape your organization, to bring new skills to your team, and to be aware of all external signals. So Hervé, is it in line with what you wrote in your book, The Fifth Generation Purchasing?
Well, yes, Alrik, and I think you've been, saying it in many ways. When you were talking about the importance of time, in this period already. Tackling risk is a battle with time. We've seen that a month of anticipation and a week of acceleration can really create a big difference with competitors. This is something we need to have in mind. Volatile environments are really opportunities to leapfrog competition. And we shouldn't be taking for granted that we will be ending up with lower performance. We had the cases provided by Carl on some of the automotive companies who've been, beating very significantly the average performance. They anticipated challenge and they were really able to rapidly deploy some new solutions. You talked about the importance of being agile and reacting to the situation. I think still it's really important to go back to some of the strategies. It's really important to revisit them, but in a different way, probably, than we were doing in the past. A good strategy is, in fact, a set of hypotheses. And they tell us, in a given context, what would be the best, decision to have. And if things are changing, still, we need to look back because we might be able to find an opportunity in terms of access to a new supplier that we had identified in the past. We might find new operational models that we've not been using recently, but that we had, identified as also an option at some point in time. So I think, we need to step back sometime. We need to look at all the dimensions of the markets, and that's really what we bring from a procurement standpoint. It's our deep knowledge into the market, and we shouldn't be succumbing to the firefighting on a day-to-day basis kind of a glory, I would say. In terms of digital, I think what would be for me very important to outline is it might be a time where we need to unplug some of the automatic algorithms that are saying what to do. So doing a bit less of the automation, while at the same time being able to use artificial intelligence to help us identify abnormalities, before they can even be visible by humans. And I think we had some really interesting examples of being able to be ahead of time with the spread of the pandemic that was given in some of the videos. Finally, I think I would conclude related to people, I would say. We need to listen these days to the people who are in the front lines. There are people that might not have been very visible, but these days they are. There are the people on the front line. There are the local logistics managers. There are the local buyer who are very close to what's happening locally and can take actions, can help us pass some of the information. We need to give these people the autonomy to voice their view, to take action as well, in order to handle the situation at the best level. And I think that if we combine a sense of purpose, a sense of urgency, maybe we can find a moment of peace in the middle of the storm. So I wish everyone a moment of peace in the middle of the storm.
Thank you, Hervé.
Thank you very much, Hervé. This moment of peace, we're going to get it now. We have some minutes for coffee break. I'm sorry, it was so urgent, this coffee break, but I was anticipating this coffee break. So, moment of peace, coffee break, some nice croissants, some chocolatine, as we said on, some fruit juice, some fresh air, to discuss in between yourself about what we heard this morning. You can stay online on YouTube channel, EIPM channel on VK. If you have any question, please, you can send them. We try to answer during this break. We'll be also answering after during the coming days if you have some more personal individual questions. So thanks very much. Keep online. We'll be back sharp at 10:45. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself for this break.
The supply management idea become more and more accepted. The supply management idea become more and more accepted. The supply management idea become more and more accepted. The supply management idea become more and more accepted.
Welcome back. It was a bit sunshining outside for the coffee break. I hope you enjoyed this first part. I hope you enjoyed this coffee break. You took some minutes to discuss with your teams, with your peers. The question is how to implement what we saw, how to take what we learned this morning and to see what we can do with these different points from Fabrice, Yusaku, and from Carl. So this first topic was on risk. We're going to jump in the second questions and the second topic, which is about the financial break-even point. What's important and interesting is the COVID crisis has been reinforcing the reality of the fact that low fixed cost structure is facilitating and enabling agility in business. So basically, we know that forever. But what's interesting is we saw that the crisis, the COVID crisis, has been reinforcing and accelerating some elements. So, say, getting a low cost, a low break even, it's interesting. But the question is how to do it. What are the best solutions to lower the fixed cost to be capable to lower this break even point? This is the first question. The second point is what is or what should be the role of purchasing procurement in this process? I'm not speaking here about costs. I'm really speaking about new ideas for lowering this break-even point. For this second topic, we are pleased to welcome José Luis Blanco. He's CEO in Nordex Acciona, coming from Spain and Germany. I'll be back on that point. Emmanuel Herbay is CPO from Capgemini, and Annie Asseig, General Manager of Procurement Technologies in NCTC, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The panel discussion will be moderated by our colleague Aldrich, partner in Argon. So now I'm very pleased to introduce José Luis. José Luis is, as I say, CEO, and I'm honored to welcome José Luis because it's pretty rare to have a CEO on board. So, bienvenida, José Luis. It's important to have your point of view because the point of view of CEO is something which is speaking about the business. And since the beginning, we have been saying that procurement has to support the business. So procurement is enabling the business. So thanks very much, José Luis, to be with us. CEO today, how important is lowering break-even points?
Thank you very much, Bernard, for having me. Good to be with you all over the world. Well, I would say that from a company perspective, the importance of break-even points is even more important within the current volatile market environment. We were all getting used to a more volatile global environment with key policies of large countries having substantial impact on trade relationships globally. And on top, the COVID pandemic has just accentuated a period of huge volatility in our business environment, and is not only happening on the demand side, but also on the supply side. So with huge volatility in front of us and with us, the best approach to support our business, in our view, your business, at times of downside volatility, is to have previously lower the break-even point of the company. And of course, this is easy to say, difficult to accomplish. This can be done by introducing a flexible operating model for your company, both to cope with the downsides, but as well the upsides. For example, again, easy to say, difficult to achieve, be a benchmark in your industry in terms of fixed cost level, realize growth, not only with your internal capabilities and capacities, but also via external capabilities, capacities, and collaboration with competitors and with key partners and suppliers, aiming at low capex, asset-light approach. And at the end, bottom line, what is important is to increase the contribution margin per unit and by unit sold by decreasing variable costs and as a consequence, increasing the value generated to the customers. So one of the utmost important and very good question, by the way.
Thank you, José Luis. So did you have to change your practices in terms of budgeting, or are you keeping the same budgeting practices and you have been adapting some tools? Have you been managing this obligation to change to lower the break-even points?
I think that what COVID has brought to our life and to our businesses and to the budgeting process and practices of our business and to the break-even point is that risk management is becoming even more important in the budget practicing stage. And it's important not only to identify the risk and opportunities and quantify them, but also to have in parallel mitigation actions ongoing for the major risk. I would say that risks are part of our daily management within a volatile market context, but the difference is about how you implement in parallel mitigation actions. So you make sure you reduce the exposure or even the time to react to the risk once the risk materialize and realize. So I would say highest and more importance to the risk management and to the contingency measures in a proactive basis is the lesson learned from this current market environment from our point of view.
Thank you, José Luis. When we speak about lowering of a break-evens, usually we speak about make, buy, or rent. So what's the mix in between these three different solutions, and did you change your proportion? What has been the impact from in terms of practices?
Yeah, that's always a very good question, regardless crisis or not. I would say, generally speaking, CPOs and COOs can and should lead business units in conducting ongoing detailed analysis that thoroughly evaluate the cost, the benefits, the risk and rewards of outsourcing and the implication of keeping the activity in-house. Generally speaking, CPOs must always challenge their organizations to make more objective as well as more informed make or buy decisions. And indeed, it's the responsibility of the CPOs to ensure that all the right trade-off have been taken into account and evaluated, and all the possibilities have been considered. Do I think now differently versus 5 or 10 years ago? I would say the answer is yes, probably yes. A mixed model is even more important under current volatile environment, but also it requires that the organization, not only procurement, feels equally responsible for the performance of internal and external capabilities. In current environment, we think it makes more sense to combine efforts, even with your competitors, collaborating with your competitors, collaborating to keep partners, to do things that make sense for the parties involved. Important to take into account, firstly, currently more drivers are forcing us to work simultaneously, internal and external capability. The fast race in innovation, in technologies, The volatility in the market, the higher pressure on competitiveness is forcing all of us to work under a balanced model between make, buy, and rent, and apply that model in a fast and flexible fashion because circumstances are changing rapidly. So speed to adapt to the new circumstances is key to be successful. Second differentiation is probably how you extract value out of working simultaneously with the different models. The differentiator is how capable you are as an organization to fit continuous improvements and benchmarking from the different models. And third and final, in our view, the decision model currently incorporates more possibilities, not only the pure models of make or outsource, but also mixed responsibilities, build to print, co-design, share IP, utilization, collaborating with competitors for common benefit. So definitely the current uncertainties bring more opportunities to do this in a more fast and flexible fashion.
Thank you, José Luis. You CEO from one very important provider in the renewable energy. And I just want to know if in your sector, in this sector, there are some very specific elements or what you face today in this specific sector is common to other sectors. Do you think there are some specificity in function of the sectors today? And your sector is quite specific, so do we find the same specificities in?
I would say, the main strategic and operational implications very much are basic industry and applies to every sector and are relating to making sure the organization and the different functions are prepared to manage this model in an efficient way. I mean, firstly, creating the organizational setups in terms of roles, responsibilities, that value internal and external capabilities as equally important for our success. And this, generally speaking, applies to most of the sectors I know. Secondly, it's very important to have a proper resource allocation, to have a successful model in terms of people, skill set, CapEx, for making the models to work. Specific is always is the quality organization, enabling the quality organization to secure and ensure output, quality, and deliver the same specification, regardless internal or external factories. The customer at the same, they receive a product from your brand, regardless how you produce your product. It's very important as well, and this is generally speaking applying to everybody, protect your IP and your competitive advantage when working very closely with external partners that at the same time work with your competitors. So this is something that we should do, but we should do in an efficient manner. We need to balance to work closely with external partners, but at the same time manage certain sufficient independence from these partners to negotiate in a I would say in a reasonable position, not to be exposed to single source. So you move from you don't want to move from a full in-source to a full outsource without leveraging power. But I would say that the principles, generally speaking, apply to majority of mature industries.
Thank you, José Luis. We are in a conference for, let's say, purchasing people, procurement people, sourcing people, supply management people, and you are a CEO. I just would like to know if you have a key message for these people, these other participants. As a CEO, what type of message will you give them to say, what is your role for supporting this lowering break-even point?
I would say, I'm leading a company global company that serves global customers. Our customers are big corporations with big names recognized all over the world. To show how important that is for me, I can summarize very easily. 80% of what we sell, we buy from key partners. So the role of CPOs, the role of the global sourcing community, in order to, together with the technology department and with the market department, developing global supply chains in collaboration and in cooperation with key players in the market to serve our customers globally in an efficient way is key. So the role of the procurement organization is crucial to engage with partners, to together, even in some cases with competitors, bring competitive solutions for our customers to stay ahead of the game in this decarbonization mission that we all have as a society. So crucial role, one of the more crucial roles in order to fight against climate change and to deliver society, to help our customers to deliver society what society is demanding, which is clean, affordable, renewable energy. For that, we need global suppliers that do the journey with us. For that, we need very strong procurement organizations that engage globally and lead our organization and our suppliers towards that goal.
José Luis, thank you very much. Any other comments would you have just to bring some points we didn't touch you would like to comment in these difficult periods we're living?
Well, I think get used to it. I think is somehow remarkable the endurance of organizations to overcome difficulties. So let's take the best of this pandemic, because once we exit these times of uncertainties, we are going to be stronger organizations with better capabilities to adapt to changing circumstances and changes permanent in our life, in our business. So let's take the positive aspects of this volatility and create organizations that are customer-centric, fast, flexible, and adapt quickly to the circumstances. So I'm optimistic that we are going to end these times with more capable and flexible organizations that are going to serve better our customers globally.
Muchas gracias, José Luis. Thanks very much, José Luis. Just to remind people, you CEO of one suppliers in the renewable energy. So you're working in close relationship with big companies in the energy. And it's interesting, your point of view was very interesting because you are providing big companies and the idea of R&D working with procurement, you know what it's about because you're bringing innovation to this big company. So thank you very much, José Luis, for this point of view. Now, I'm very pleased and honored to welcome Hani Halsey. Is the General Purchasing Manager for Innovations. So, Hani, salam alaikum, Hani. Very pleased to have you here. You did implement some specific action in STC to have purchasing procurement at a very early stage of a decision to give a green light to the budget before getting the budget confirmed. So you know what it's about, and you understood long times ago had to lower this break-even point in CapEx. So thanks very much to be with us, Hani. And
Good afternoon, Asia. Good morning, Europe. Thanks very much, Hani, to be with us this morning. It's a pleasure to welcome you here. The first question I want to bring you is how important is lowering break-even point in the procurement agenda today?
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, EIPM team, for arranging this conference digitally this year. And also, I wish happy 30 year for EIPM. As you know, Bernard, procurement role to support the organization to achieve the vision and goals. And no doubt, a major goal of any organization post of Corona is to reduce the waste and reduce the operational cost. And as you know, during this Corona crisis, the result of the year of the investment showed, but not always good. And I think this is the good time to review the investment, to remove all this waste and where possible. I think also procurement is the best position to help to reduce the break-even point by engaging early in the budgeting cycle to reshape the demand. As you know, the CBO today, one of the priorities of any CBO today, to contribute in organization growth and to have the right budget to lower the running costs. And this is very important to be in the early engagement of the budgeting cycle to achieve this.
Thank you very much, Annie. On this early engagement in the budgeting process, can you describe a bit how it works and what you have been doing on this point?
Sure. As you know, usually to setting the budget, it's happened between the finance and business units, with the procurement getting involved in the later stage. The early engagement means procurement is embedded in the process when the business unit start assigning their needs in the coming year. This will allow the better planning and maximize the return for the company. And also based on my experience in STC, this can be happen in the 4th stage, starting from the data collection up to the creating the sourcing initiative. Firstly, this engagement with all our stakeholders in each business unit and monitoring their changing needs over the years. Secondly, design the requirement and shaping the scope. This will help business unit to build the initial budget for the year. After that, number 3, we can enhance this requirement by looking at the re-specification, looking to the demand management, looking to cost reduction also. This will create the right fit budget, which meet the sector needs and the organization operational cost target. Lastly, procurement can start execution the sourcing initiative. This is the 4th stage based on what we implement in STC. The late procurement involvement, this will lead to additional load on the sourcing process and unnecessary activity.
Thank you, Annie. What have been the results in STC? What have been the results of this early engagement in the budgeting process, concretely?
The early engagement involvement in the planning process will deliver a lot of benefit for the company, and everyone will benefit from this. If we start with the business unit, they will build the right fit budget, as I mentioned. They will get view in the supply market analysis. Also, they will get the update list price, showing the TCO impact in the CapEx. They can decide to choose between build versus buy option. And this really will help the business unit to rationalize the project portfolio. For procurement, if you take it from the procurement perspective, this will help to identify better sourcing alternative with synergy across the project. This will help also to bundling the project as a mega deal or mega negotiation. Also to optimize the awarding time frame. As a result, it will help the company in large to achieve the saving, to improve the bottom line, and looking to contribute in the other area beyond the cost. Really, we have to remember here, procurement has a full view to all the spend in the organization. So we can, as a procurement, help align all the requirements with other area in the organization.
Hani, could you say about this early engagement in the budgeting process and all the positive aspects is specific to the telecom business, or you say that this idea of early engagement for lowering the break-evens can be also implemented in any other sector,
in the telecom industry, as you know, it's very fast changing. So the early engagement is even more important for procurement. To have a heads up of the changes in the technology and integrate the scope into the sourcing strategy. But this approach will benefit all industry. Early procurement involvement in budgeting cycle allow better planning and maximize the return. Also, the procurement can lower the break-even point through the budgeting cycle by sitting with insight in the two things, unit price and demand management. In the unit price, they can bring it against the historical price. Also, for the demand management, they can check it against the correlated project and demand assumption.
Okay, Annie. So we in STC and telecom is in a very dynamic market, a very changing market. How it impacts this idea of lowering the break-even points? I know you have to. You're in these words where we're reducing the cost. What can you say concerning these ideas of your sectors, break-even points, and this early engagement?
As I mentioned earlier, really, this early engagement. Will be improve the alignment and the collaboration between all the sectors and the procurement. Also, this will allow procurement to work in the sourcing strategy early and to build also the holistic strategy for procurement. This also it will be allows us to early engagement with our partner, which can also help to reduce the cost and build a strong relationship with our partner.
When you speak about partner, you speak about internal partner and external partners, meaning that these early engagements and looking for lowering break-even points has been changing this relation. Besides this idea of costing, how it has been changing this relation with your internal partner and your external partner.
I agree with you. Yes, internal partner as a stakeholder in business unit. Will have more collaboration, more engagement together, more understanding to the scope, and help them. And for the external partner, our partner really, it will be easy for them to understand what our requirement, and this will help us to reduce the cost and have better outcome. And one of the latest survey from our partner, they appreciate our transparency. And I think if we start early with them, this will also increase the transparency between organization and partner.
When you speak about these transparencies, when you were used to buy with one type of suppliers, and based on the idea of break-even points, lowering the break-even point, you say, well, we have to switch to rent or perhaps to make. Do you take this decision in relation with these external partners? How do you communicate this change in your strategy based on this willingness to lower this break-even point?
Yes, our strategy, this is very important. The beginning of the year, when we have the budget and we have the project, we will have this full transparency for the expected scope with our partner. Because if we build our long relationship with our partner, they know what they will coming in the pipeline. They will give us better outcome. They will give us more ideas to have the innovation. As you know, a lot of the innovation came from our partner by this collaboration with our partner.
Yeah, just to be clear with all of the people who are looking at you, when you speak about investments, you have heavy CapEx, infrastructure, you have also technologies, you have all the elements. So can you apply all these strategies to all type of categories you're buying, or you say that it's maybe easier to lower this break-even point on some elements for some categories, such as CapEx, or perhaps for new investments with some startups?
Yes, we have the CapEx project also, and we have the OpEx project. Mainly, this will help a lot also in the OpEx project for the managed service. We have long project with our partner this will reduce the managed service cost, will reduce the OpEx cost, and will have direct impact to the bottom line. And this will help the company to break even the point.
Okay, thank you very much, Hani. Just one final question. Do you have any recommendation for your peers for 2021, this post-COVID year? What do you advise? What are your advice when we speak about break-even points and lowering the break-even point?
Really, we have learned a lot over the last year. But there is three things I would like to recommendation for the organization. First thing, we have agile procurement. Really, it's agile procurement is not an option today. We need to build the function can deliver in the days and also can adapt to be delivered in the hours also. The second point, as a part of the agile, we need to build the local supply chain where possible, to improve the sustainability index and become more resilient. And this localization, it will help to build in-country value. Also, it will increase the GDP. And last recommendation also, to build the strong relationship, as you mentioned, with external partner, internal partner. We need to understand our stakeholder, our internal partner needs and challenges to can help them in the future. And all this 3 points cannot be happen if we don't have the right talent. So we need to ensure to have the right mix in our team to deliver the agile procurement and meet financial and digital goal for any organization.
Shukran, Hani. Thanks very much, Hani, for this explanation. These principles of the decision you took, and who gave you the award in 2019, the EIPM Peter Krajcik Award. So this is a complete part of what you have been explaining for these elements of how to lower the break-even point. Now I'm going to welcome the third speaker, Emmanuel Herba, who is the CPO of Capgemini. So I'm very pleased to welcome him because he's in a sector where agility is key. Agility is key, and he has been implementing all elements, getting for the agility, and all the elements he has been implementing allow him to get the award, EIPM Peter Krajcik Awards in 2020, so just after during the COVID crisis. So with that, we understand that he knows a lot on this
Well.
Just some questions about these points of lowering the break-even point. Cost containment and contribution to lowering break-even point with lower volume is somehow the priority number one of most procurement organizations today. How do you structure your effort, and what kind of competencies do you need for that?
So there are two dimensions to it. This dynamic started a year ago. I remember supply chain disruption, evaporation of demand, most companies facing uncertainty on one side and a dramatic reduction of their revenue from 15 to 50%, depending on the sectors. Clearly, the first reaction at CEO level is to say, I need to reduce my break-even point so that I can navigate through the storm. How does it work then? I would say a Pavlovian reaction on the procurement side, which is to stop orders, reduce volumes, eliminate any unnecessary spend. And I would say a more structural answer that comes in the following months, which is, what do I need to release to keep operations running? And how do I need to redesign my supply chain and my demand so that this cost containment is sustainable? So these type of activities cannot be done alone. For sure, you need a command and control structure in your organization, stopping the POs, renegotiating the contracts, managing your supply base. But at the same time, you need to very closely interact with your operations and your sales to enable this to be properly tuned to where your client demand is. Last but not least, and super important, at least in the context of pandemic, but I would say in the context of any crisis, you need to take care of your employees and make sure that their basic needs for safety, for continuity of operations are fulfilled, and basically that your cost containment activities do not impair the mandatory mission of taking care of your fellows. So that's the basic structure. How does it articulate then more specifically? At least in our case, there were task force and war rooms on each major stream. One was operation, another one was supporting our clients. The third one was taking care of our employees. The fourth one was addressing each supply chain disruption coming from the crisis. And I would say within 3 to 4 months, it clearly became obvious that we needed to combine this with a mid-long-term view, because when you hit the brakes, when you change the setup of your organization, when the assumptions are no longer the same, when your volumes are reduced, you need to redesign and rethink the way you're going to operate beyond, again, the hit the brakes type of reaction. Underlying and major enabler is very close cross-functional coordination, horizontally, I'd say, and shortening the decision-making process by connecting directly the key functions to the board and with a high frequency, at least bi-weekly, reviews for information and decision. Talking with peers, I think most successful companies have operated that way, and the ones who are the most agile, the most decisive in converting both short-term and mid-term decisions into action have come out of the crisis pretty successfully. But not only this, they're coming out fitter, okay? To quote Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus, light is right in such terms.
Thank you very much. Talents and leadership are rotating in multiple companies toward the kind of expertise and drive enabling such priorities. What are the key drivers of this effort? What do you need to pay attention to, Emmanuel?
So that there's a couple elements into this. One, people behave differently whether you're in steady state or in crisis. And actually, you see talents emerge. You see behaviors, winning behaviors emerge with people who basically connect the dots and are stepping up. And the very nature of leadership evolves. In such case, it's no longer a statutory leadership. It's very much an action-driven leadership. And somehow, what is important is to spot and facilitate the emergence of such leadership. It's not necessarily, I would say, a chaos or a coup d'etat. It's just a different skill set that needs to be expressed, probably less inhibited, more straight to the point, very pragmatic, and able to encompass a broad range of dimensions beyond its own function. And this particularly applies to procurement. So what does it mean? Clearly, it means very high frequency communication and letting people express their views, but also being able to decide and transform suggestions into action with no delay. This has a drawback and a point of attention, clearly, which is some people can be left on the side of the road. Why? Because communication means can become very informal. Decisions go very quickly to the top. Once they're made, it's execution. And as always, you can have a part of your team who feels spectator, okay, or put aside. And if you combine this with, I would say, some personal disruptions, there's a high probability that some people will just feel they're left aside. And I would say the attention of the management is to keep them on board, adjust the expectations to the capabilities of the team, and there is no small contribution there. I would say the biggest trap is to have some fellows who are no longer part of the dynamic. And unfortunately, when things accelerate, it's often is a risk. And another dimension is, in terms of talent, be sure that there is a mix of speed and control. Okay, you may see people very at ease in the crisis mode, in the firefighting, and you need to mix your talents so that you combine those with people who are more structured and more process-oriented, just to be sure that you don't confuse speed and precipitation, so to say. That's all the more important that consequences can be great. And obviously, the dimension that clearly explodes in such case, it's all about relationship. Okay? When you have to work with insufficient data, short lead times, goodwill of your organization, your peers, your clients, keeping the relationship at the highest level in terms of quality and in terms of deepness is super important. So basically, it's made for leaders.
Digitalization and demand management are key drivers, together with governance, getting procurement much closer to CEOs. And given the decision we know, so meaning the next normal, a make or buy decision, drastic volume reduction, how you procurement in Capgemini, have you been working on that?
So digitalization is all about data. And when you need to make quick decisions, it's important to have the most relevant level of information. And this is where basically you can see the difference between organizations who know what is going on. They're able to say, where is their supply, where is their demand, what is missing, what is in excess, what could be eliminated. So it's the data dimension is key. You make good decisions if they are educated decisions, and those decisions are driven by the most available level of data. And that's the digitalization major outcome is you're on top of your data. And when you have this, you enable a second dimension, which is analyze the demand. And when it's all about doing volume and specification effect, okay? The price dimension, I wouldn't say is anecdotal, but you know, you're going to optimize your price within a single digit dimension. When you work on specification on volumes, you're talking about double digit and high double digits. So it's about understanding the demand. If you do it blindly, you can make huge errors. And sometimes doing it with a more mindful approach can enable to, on one side, identify what is totally unnecessary, on the side, understand where you need to invest. And making the meaningful investment in times of crisis, in times of crunch, and understanding what you need to reduce and what you need to increase from a demand standpoint. If it's well driven by adequate data, then you're making the right decisions. And again, this is where big differentiation has taken place between companies. Some kind of hitting the brakes uniformly, sometimes with dramatic effects, and others modulating their efforts, investing on areas, cutting on others, and readjusting their operating model to make the best of it. Some examples, we've all seen it. When everybody went to work from home, this created a huge disruption in the way a company is allocating its resource. On one side, you need to connect your employees and provide them compute, store resources together with all the enablers to work remotely. On the other side, super important to cut what is totally unnecessary given this new normal way of working. And it's all about balance. The speed at which you execute it is totally different. Okay? Addressing real estate or facilities, negotiations or contracts with dimensions of multi-year contracts has nothing to do with supplying IT equipment. And basically, you need to play on one side on what you invest in, on the other side what you reduce, and work at different paces. All this, again, is very much about timing and data. That's the essence of digitalization.
Thank you, Emmanuel. One interesting point is we know that cash is king, but at the same time, due to the low rate we're living in, a lot of companies is forgetting this idea of cash. And we know that one day or another it will be ending. And some have this debt maybe exploding and so on and so forth. Anything we need to be cautious about when we're focusing on this cash, and what do you suggest?
So this one is, we are at a turning point. Most companies were very focused on cash in the last 10 years, up to the point where most efforts were completed. And this being combined with a low interest era made it kind of less critical. As we all know, in periods of crisis, cash is king. And for companies who short-term need to preserve their cash because it's their blood, so to say. And mid-term know that if they need to invest, they're going to need cash in more difficult conditions. It's important to put again a clear focus on it and do it once again in a mindful way, because we all know the society is made of various stakeholders. And among those, there's a lot of small businesses that got completely crushed by the evaporation of cash. And there you need a very differentiated approach. On one side, even if it's not the first reaction, especially for large groups, preserve your cash ratio, improve your cash to cash. On the other side, keep your supply base alive, and make sure that all the incentives, especially governmental incentives, are geared and rooted to where it's needed. So it's about being mindful and discerning in the way you optimize your cash. For sure, it's also a matter of survival. What we see today is that the investment capabilities of many companies is reduced across the world. Whilst we all know it's going to be the differentiator when the market accelerates and when we are back for growth. And as a consequence, I focus on cash, and I can make a testimony for my company has been on the top of mind. But again, doing it, taking care of smaller companies and suppliers who are part of our ecosystem, and making sure that it is done with care and in a discerning manner.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Perhaps the last question is about the context. We need to make it more difficult as sustainability, focus on growth, clients, and offset somehow the pushes for traditional cost reduction techniques in a buyer's market. Any final recommendation for your peers, for other colleagues who will be around this conference?
So, with everything we said, we could say this is the golden era of procurement. You know, the kind of decennial crisis that everybody waits for to show what procurement can bring. And we need to not to be lured or take this the wrong way. What is at stake more than ever, and I would say for all companies, first of all, is to restore growth. We're in 2021 March. Some sectors have already resumed growth. If you think about raw material, if you think about freight, for example, some others will have to wait till the end of the year, if not longer. But in everybody's top of mind, growth is a top priority. And never, ever you will see a company sacrificing growth for reducing its break-even point. At best, it's going to be profitable growth. So procurement needs to be mindful about not being excessive in that way, and keeping in mind the other dimensions. I would even say we need to be totally schizophrenic and keep the pressure on the cost structure, because it's a priority, because it's a buyer's market. It's not going to last forever, because it's necessary to keep the companies alive when turnover is reduced. But keep in mind that what is coming, what has already started on other dimensions, on sustainability, because we know that the way we've been operating is not the way we will be operating, that the sensitivity to climate, to societal dimensions, to social dimensions is more exacerbated than ever, and for valid reasons. Stakeholder capitalism now is the way to go, so to say. Growth, I mentioned it, and obviously clients. Never forget that we are into an interconnected world, and that our clients are also suppliers. And all the traditional techniques to squeeze cost from volume, from demand, from price dimension, taking into account, obviously, for the ones who still have a decent activity, the pricing power that is more on the buyer side needs to be balanced with the other stake of the company. And we were mentioning earlier in this conversation that the communication paths have been shortened. So today, any CPO is in direct relationship with its CEO for the importance of the break-even point and the actions that were triggered for now more than a year. On the other side, we know well that the agenda of the CEO is a much broader one than just the cost, and procurement needs to understand that. Again, combining, I would say, this brutal agenda with the other dimension is probably the best way for procurement to emerge reinforced and somehow enhanced from this crisis, enabling to survive through the storm, but also anticipating that a nicer weather will be back, that growth doesn't come on a field of ruins. You need to fuel the growth, and that sustainability is the way to go to make sure that everything we have done through the crisis is not associated with larger drawbacks that one is trying to offset. And again, client should, as always, remain the focus, not only for the sales, not only for the marketing, but also, and more importantly, for procurement, because you know then why you are buying what you are buying, which is for the client.
Merci beaucoup, Emmanuel. Thanks very much, Emmanuel, for this great, deep presentation, full of thought to think about and to implement. Thank you very much. I'm now very pleased to introduce Aldric Vignon, partner at Argo.
Hi, everybody. So let's wait a minute for everybody to be back with us. Great, thank you all. So we will start this round table after this really fruitful videos and discussion we have been seeing a few minutes ago. So as you may notice, all of you three have made some common focuses, and I would like to start with that. Maybe a first question for you, José Luis, as a CEO, what have you seen from your customers during the last year period? Were the buyers behaving properly or differently?
No, thank you very much. And I share with my colleagues in the panel that this crisis brought an additional set of skills that were needed in order to properly serve. So understanding end-to-end, making sure that we are part of an ecosystem, that we need suppliers, that our customers need us, that we need our suppliers to deliver society what society requires from us. So it's more important than ever before, think end-to-end with the short-term challenges in front of us. Business continuity task force is the mantra in all of our companies, but with the long-term view that we need to stay alive, delivering society the products that and the services that society needs long-term. In our sector, we are lucky that we are part of decarbonizing the world. So it's really working together with your customers, with your suppliers, with the governments in order to make sure that the sector prevail. So you need from the procurement organization more strategic than ever before kind of mindset. So was always important, but in the current circumstances, you need CEO strategic mindset in the procurement departments of at least in our company.
Thank you for your feedback. Emmanuel, you have described a few minutes ago all action you have implemented over the last year. Have you sustained some of them, and for which reasons?
So, as a matter of fact, we've not kept everything because there were a lot of activities that were very reactive due to supply chain disruptions or new needs that didn't last anymore. I'll give you an example. 1 year ago, we were fighting to buy mask. Today, mask is not an issue. Okay. On the other side, we have completely revisited our sourcing strategies across all categories, taking into account the new market conditions, sector per sector, understanding whether it's a constrained or not market, whether the actors are still the same, whether it's a buyer's market, and whether we are facing cyclical evolution or structural evolutions. Yeah. And this will remain. I think organizations have understood that we cannot assume that things will last as before. Yeah, and that change and disruption now is part of the game. There were keywords last year, and that are still valid. Resilience is one, agility is another, volatility, and unpredictability. Basically, with those elements, you need still to plan, still to run strategies, but basically, you need to adapt. You need to be able to adjust, accelerate, slow down, and basically make or buy takes an overall new dimension in that environment. Okay, because clearly the buy dimension has demonstrated that it offers much more flexibility than the make, but has some drawbacks. So all this to say that some activities that were, again, very reactive are stopping. Anything that is about strategizing and exercising all the procurement levers to drive value, agility, speed, resilience, and so forth, this one remains and is more than ever on the table.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Hani, at STC, did you implement such short-term action as well, and did you select the same to be part of your new way of working?
Good afternoon from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much for arranging this roundtable. Really, this last year is difficult for everyone, and there is a new habit and good practice happen during the last year, and we need to continue this good practice. Maybe I can share two points. The first one, we implement the digital signature during this pandemic because we cannot meet our partner to sign the contract. And we implement this digital signature, authorized digital signature from the government, and we continue this after the pandemic. And this helps us now today to be 100% paperless procurement organization in STC. And we implement paperless for future initiative in our organization. Second thing, maybe regarding the collaboration with our partner, there is a lot of engagement today during this digital channel and this WebEx and Zoom, and we can reach now the headquarters. We can arrange meeting with all over the world, and this is we keep it continue after lockdown. And we have also hybrid model now. Maybe these 2 points I would like to share with.
Thank you, Hani. Now let's maybe focus a bit on people and new skill sets, as were mentioned before. Jose Luis, you mentioned it a little bit before. You've heard Hani and Emmanuel highlighting new profile skills that are now required to lower the break-even point. Do you share this idea with them?
No, clearly. I mean, I can not agree more that you need flexibility, speed. I mean, it's great long-term planning capabilities because we should not mix, as mentioned by Emmanuel, firefighting with forgetting completely about the structure and processes. But you need to assume that you live in a market of high volatility. So high volatility means first protecting the business, high uncertainties in shipping, in raw material costs. So we started with the first COVID wave, and the first priority was, as mentioned, mask, and then getting materials to the different factories, and then getting products to the customers in different countries, and some countries were in lockdown. So it was a real business continuity task force. But then now you move to a different level, dealing with the uncertainties and the massive volatility that this massive disruption in the supply chain has created. So you need long-term strategic thinkers, but as well people with the right flexibility and speed to change gears very quickly and to adapt quickly to the circumstances. So I would say that we cannot forget about the strategic thinking and about collaboration with supplier, collaboration with your customers. We are part of an ecosystem that we need each other, but we need people with the right drive to make quick decisions, to implement, and not to enter into paralysis by analysis, because by definition, plans are obsolete in 1 week. So you need to react fast, create new plans, and deliver.
Okay,
so which is a nice combination of strategic thinking and drive in execution, I will say.
Thank you. Hani, during the crisis, did you notice, as Emmanuel said, that you should be cautious about your team, making sure that no one is left aside?
I think the team and the people and any organization is the most important asset. And in procurement, we didn't use to have this remote working, but now we adapt ourselves quickly, and this showing how we are more agile. And also we keep the engagement with the team. Yes, we are working from distance, but we are very close to each other. We try to keep this all-hand meeting, check-in meeting, calls, using all the digital channel also to have this communication. This is very important to engage the team and adjust to serve our customer and not disrupt our service.
Okay, thank you, Annie. And Emmanuel, did you build on the crisis to review your management style or the management style of your team?
So there are multiple dimensions to this question. Obviously, the work from home syndrome has changed a lot of things, and basically two patterns of behaviors have emerged. On one side, very proactive, connected people, crossing boundaries, adjusting to the limitations. And on the other side, people completely overwhelmed, trying to save the planet from their screen. When you give an impossible challenge to only one person isolated, it just creates huge stress, right? So once the pattern of working from home and the use of all digital tools will remain, and by the way, it was already in place before the crisis for our company and many others, it's just been extended to the very maximum. Because it's been stretched, we need to pay a lot of attention to how people are able to digest it in the long run. It's one thing to work under constraints for a limited period of time. It's another thing to do it systematically. Okay, and what people call the new normal will have to be a balance in terms of lifestyle, management style, and behaviors. And I insist on behaviors because if there is not enough attention to this, it's like thinking that people are robots. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay? When we talk about automation, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we always have ethics and human dimension in mind, and we are just in the middle of it today. Another element that I wanted to mention on this is the operating model of companies is going to change dramatically and has already changed with flattening of organizations and very close communication across management layers. Yeah. It starts with the crisis because you know you need to get things done, and whoever raised the hand and says I have a plan, I'm going to do it, gets the job. And in the long run, we're going to see the link between individual contributors up to the CEO shorten dramatically. Yeah, and the traditional management of command and control and you know communication layers before information gets transmitted or actions completed will blow up and has blown up. And basically, it's not only an adaptation on the teams, but it's even a bigger adaptation on the management. You know, the traditional management of having all the people around you and controlling what they do and basically working by constant mutual adjustments, it's fading away. It's going to be much more about being clear on achievable yet aggressive objectives, on understanding the means rather than compensating them, and also about promoting proactivity. And you know that the management style has a huge impact on the proactiveness of the people. Yeah? Okay. If you are too directive, if objectives are unclear or not properly framed, basically you don't develop proactiveness. Yeah? Okay. So these are all dimensions that for sure are on the table, and we are living today a revolution on that field. But I think a positive one, because if it's well driven, it's going to drive a new generation of leaders who are much more suited to the way the world is operating.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I would like then now to elaborate on the levers and lowering the break-even point, which is the focus of this roundtable. So you have all mentioned that demand, relationship, specification are one of the key levers to lower the break-even point. I would like to know if you think that it's business as usual from a procurement perspective. So Emmanuel, what are your thoughts about these levers and the current situation?
So this one is work in progress, I'd say. You know, I'm just completing the strategic plan for our procurement function, and it's a big cross-functional work. And what we came across is that whilst yes, the key levers that have been used will remain. Okay. Demand management, optimizing the spec, and so on and so forth, for sure. But there are, I think, other dimensions that are adding to this, which are linked to more the environment in the broad meaning. The environment from a sustainability standpoint. You know, for example, we introduced a new notion. Most decisions were made by what we call total cost of ownership. Okay, this is a 40 years old type of KPI that has driven a lot of decisions. Today, we need to call it TSCO, which is a total sustainable cost of ownership, and sustainable not only for the environment that has taken an unprecedented dimension, but also sustainable from a business standpoint. And by this, I mean, how does it fit in the purpose of your company and its relationship with its ecosystem and clients? And here you see a whole new dimension of opportunities, because, and that's something we learned, by the way, through the last crisis. When the world is falling apart, when you cannot rely on anything from supply chain or technology, at the end of the day, you depend on the goodwill of your ecosystem and your clients. And what we have learned is that if you're able to orchestrate this goodwill and shape it into very strong, more than collaboration, I'd say it's shared purpose, you end up opening completely new horizon between the company, its clients, and its suppliers.
Okay.
And I think whilst, again, the key levers, traditional levers will remain, there's something more that is emerging and that actually will make the difference between the winners and the losers going forward.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel. José Luis, as CEO, what are your new expectations, and maybe to rebound on what Emmanuel said?
I very much agree. In our experience and in our case, we are in the middle of the value chain for our customers to deliver an essential service to society, which is energy, and future demand, which is renewable energy. So from that view of sustainability, that's part of the DNA. So I don't expect too many changes other than a high increase on sustainability from all stakeholders, from investors, clients, banks, everybody. So, but it's somehow we were already forecasting that to happen pre-crisis. What is new for us, and maybe as we are one step in the value chain to deliver an essential service to society, was risk management. We were so used that the world was flowing like a machine, so like a takt time. Everything was running perfect, logistic, deviating from the plan was an exception. So when deviating from the plan is a real exception, and then it becomes the normality, and you need to keep delivering electricity, our customers need to keep delivering electricity, we were not sufficiently planning the worst case scenario in order to bring products, in order to bring parts, in order to bring spare parts, and to keep the assets running for an essential service that the society needs. I think could be the same in telecommunication or in other sectors. In our case, I think we need to improve going forward the risk management and the contingency planning for the worst. We were getting used to very worldwide running function supply chain, and this has proven that was not the case in a massive disruption like this.
Okay, thank you, José Luis. Time is running, so I would like to maybe finalize with one last question around budget, which has been mentioned as a key enabler. Hani, could you tell us a little bit more about what you have implemented and the main pitfalls you are facing today after 4 years of process improvement?
Thank you very much. Really, this is one of the most important things regarding the budget today, budgeting cycle, how we can improve our budgeting cycle. As you know, in technology, especially in the technology companies and telecom industry, the technology is very fast changing. And this will make our role as a procurement to have the baseline, to have the benchmark more difficult. And this is really make us to be ready to be a part of this budgeting cycle, to make sure the organization have the right budget for procurement in the next year. And this also need to be help us to use the zero budget base to build our budget. Based on the experience, really we have successful story to build the right budget. And but we need also improvement. Always there is a pitfall, and we need to improve it, especially when we have new technology, new licenses there is no baseline and no benchmark.
Okay, thank you. And maybe to conclude, José Luis, how do you push your organization to rethink the budget approach and avoid being too rigid or too strict?
Well, this is very much intrinsic to living with very disruption times. So as we mentioned before, agility, flexibility, speed are crucial because budgets are very much obsolete. When you are through those disruption times. So budgeting cycle that needs to be shortened and reaction, and it's more important to be on top of activity and planning. I would say long-term planning is less important than short-term optimization in order to minimize impact for society and for our customers. You need to keep the long-term strategic planning horizon and prepare the long-term investments in technology, in supply chain, and so on to deliver your strategic plan. But the changes in supply chain are so massive that you need to adapt weekly in a business continuity task force and assume that budgets might be required to change, and that's part of our life. So we need to be flexible, adapt to the circumstances, take the best, because the companies that will survive will be stronger, agile, and enjoy a better growth just after the crisis.
Okay. So thank you, all of three. I think we run out of time, and we could spend hours discussing on this topic. So thank you, all of three, for your main contribution and your main insight on this important point. And then I would like to welcome back Hervé for a short wrap-up session and to share our thoughts on what has been discussed previously. So Hervé, what's your view on lowering the break-even point?
Well, thanks a lot, Aldrich. I think I would like to step back for a second. I think what we've seen over the past years was a multiplication of disconnected initiatives inside companies. Every function had its own transformation plan. There were like multiple island of digital projects popping up in many places. And what we see now is really the need to have some very strong cross-functional strategic initiatives within companies, whether this is budgeting or whether this is these sessions where operations, engineering, procurement work together to revise the make, buy, rent decisions. I think it's really important to give a lot of attention and put this type of groups into the driving seats in the years to come. And it's challenging, but it's so important to look at these decisions from multiple angles. A second point that I think is really important, listening to everyone, but also trying to take a little bit of perspective, is what we've seen in research is a lot of tendencies to adopt the 1 out of n syndrome. 1 out of n is like, you need to give targets to individuals, you need to do some budget allocation, capital allocation across different business units. And there's a bit the tendency of, looking at the number of these units or segments and then, adjusting marginally the 1 out of n number. And I think we've heard about budget-based zero. We've heard about really looking at some considering local challenges in order to prepare for growth. We need to think back from the bottom. We need to look at all these decisions with sound reasoning and not just rough cuts across the organization. And back also to the book, Fifth Generation, time is so essential here. We keep hearing it and hearing it, but it's really something that's profoundly transforming organization today. We've got this multiple time horizon. We need to slow down in the early stages of the budget process in order to accelerate after. Time dynamics are so important when we hear Emmanuel talking about the necessity at the same time to break by reducing some of the spend while considering, the rebound and being ready to move into the growth mode. Those are essential frames of time that we need to consider. 18 months ago, it was a challenge to exploit and explore opportunities at the same time. I've been so impressed with a lot of the buyers. I've seen, taking the horn by the bull by the horn over the past year, and being able at the same time to source protective equipments to secure the life of people around them, and reinventing their strategy and changing their supply footprint for protective equipment, for instance. And I think that's paramount. It's like chicken. A chicken can see close and far at the same time. We all need to, get of this ability to work on multiple time horizon and progress at different speed according to these different goals. Back to you, Haldrik. Any other learnings you got from all of these sessions?
Yes, in a few words, we all have noticed that last year has dramatically changed the way procurement it was and is involved with the business. So the need to lower the break-even point is stronger than before, but with the need to prepare the next steps, the next business rebound, as you said, Hervé, and also all the three speakers. So combining short-term opportunities with mid-term or long-term business is now at stake. So we'd like to emphasize three main points. The first one, that cost control and optimization are still the foundation of procurement. That's not the question. That is where the procurement organization must excel without any doubt. Whatever we can hear or listen or say, performance is the main focus of procurement. But I think that there is a slight change in the way this performance is and should be measured, and the expectation of the top management has changed, as mentioned by José Luis. Cost is by nature a multi-factor variable, and data is a key enabler to support the appropriate decision-making process. As price is the outcome of specification, quantity, legal, supplier's behavior, your strategy. For example, procurement should put data at the heart of the decision matrix today, understanding business structure to define what is fixed, what is variable on the internal side as well on supplier side. Data, from my view, is now fueling more than ever all make, buy, share decision, as you mentioned, Hervé. And this is also the cement of the multifunctional teamwork you also described at the beginning. So my last point will be around agility, because from my view, agility is now a virtue for procurement, which needs to combine short-term action with mid-term and long-term view. But most of the team were not selected on those criteria and those skills, and the talents has been revealed during the COVID crisis and the last year, as explained by Emmanuel, for example. But how to leverage this new profile to accelerate procurement performance today? Or the former top performer profile is dead. As described by Emmanuel, it's clearly one managerial challenge for the months to come, to bring more and more cohesion into the teams with different skills and different level of performance. So I think this will heavily contribute to lower the break-even point of the companies. So that's my last point. Thank you, Hervé, for sharing with us your insight, and I think I will leave the mic to Bernard to finalize the first round session.
Thank you, Haldrik.
Thank you, Aldrich. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Hervé. Thank you, Aldrich, for this synthesis. We're finishing this first day. Through these two different sessions, we understood that COVID has been an accelerator of position. We understood also that COVID has been an accelerator for consequences of any decision, good or bad. We understood also that luck does not really exist. It's frequently a consequence of anticipation. We understood that business is a driver, and to help the business to be even more successful, we need to think somehow differently. We need to think more in terms of people, in terms of organization, to think differently in terms of actions, to think differently in terms of tools or in terms of processes. We understood that we need an internal expertise on data management in the purchasing and procurement department to develop our adapted specific tools. We understood also that technical operational implementation is important, but we understood also that behavior is key in the relation with the internal and external stakeholders and partners. We understood that the world has been shrinking, embedded in virtual relations. This is the reasons why I really think we have to be optimistic to discover this new word, this new renaissance, what the Italian call this rinascimento. People are driving and are the drivers of all these changes, supported by technology and not the other way around. This is not the technology who is driving the world. So we need to go toward this fifth generation purchasing at the when pace meets powers. And this is the very important point that Hervé and Aldrich has been sublining, is to say that time is changing and you give a pass. So thanks very much to all the speakers. Thanks very much to the moderator. Thanks very much to all of you who have been staying with us on YouTube and VK. Thank you to the complete team who transformed a virtual ID in a concrete realization, permitting to connect so many people from around the world. Thank you to our colleague from Argo & Co. Thank you to the EIPM team, I know more, to Natalia, Cecilia, Eric, to a very big thanks to Hervé, who is the thinker of this event, and to Fred, who is the doer, the show director, and also to the rest of the team. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you tomorrow afternoon for the two next topics, revisiting the supply chain footprint and investing in new technologies. Keep in mind that you can start changing some little things before the world changes totally. So thank you very much, and keep in touch on the EIPM.org. So thanks very much. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. It was a great pleasure to be with you. Bye-bye.